Hi, I'm Rob Cosman. Welcome to my shop. I was asked recently by a friend of mine named Larry to show a better way or a more secure way of putting together a flat miter. And if you've been woodworking any length of time, you've probably come to realize that a flat miter can be extremely difficult to do accurately and to get it to stay together. So, I'm Rob Cosman and welcome to my shop. We make it our job to help you take your woodworking to the next level. If you're new to our channel, be sure to subscribe, turn on that notification bell, and don't forget to turn on the notification on your mobile device so you'll know every time we release a new video. Good? All right, back to the bench. Got a couple pieces of mahogany. I have them milled 3/4 by 1 3/4 inch. I've shot both edges so they're parallel and the edges are square. First thing I'm going to do is actually square up the ends. So I'll flip this over, cut a little chamfer on the back side, and then plane across the end. Do the same thing on this one. Pull it away from the fence. Flip it over, that way you've got a little chamfer back there that'll prevent tearing out the back side. A little bit more on this one. Okay. Now, I'll set the gauge to the width of this piece of mahogany. And on this one, I'm going to let's mark those faces. So this will be the outside, this will be the outside. I'm going to scribe a line on the back side. Now we'll take my combination square and just run that from the outside corner. I'm going to shoot this, so I'll make it accurate with the shooting board. I'm just going to rough out that. I'll grab a bench hook. And I've got a 45 cut into the back side, so it'll just help. It's actually on the wrong side. It's okay, I can do it from here. I'm just going to run off that inside line that I put on there. I'm going to stay away from it just a little bit. As I mentioned, I'll finish this up or make it more accurate with my 45-degree shooting board. Let me just grab a clamp. Hold that in place so it doesn't wiggle around when I'm sawing. Okay, now we'll use the shooting board. I want that to be right on that line, and I may have to move that because I haven't quite got rid of all the saw mark and I'm down below my line, so I'll have to reset that. Okay. Now I'm going to have to do this with a square and a blade because I no longer have a reference surface out here. I've cut that piece off. So right there, and I'm using a plain blade because it's flat on the side that I want to keep and keeps the bevel on the waist side. Okay, now I need to divide this in half. I'm going to leave that set. I'll just grab another marking gauge. And the easiest way to do it is to first guess and make a mark, flip this over, and see if those two marks line up. And I've lost sight of it. There it is. Looks like it might have been a pretty good guess. I'm going to do it again though. I can hardly see it. No. A little too much. I'll pull that cutter back a bit. That's good. Okay, so this is my face side, so I'm going to scribe a line along the miter. I'll just use my square to transfer this line up the back side. I don't want a line on there from a knife line. Pencil mark I can easily get rid of. I'm referencing off the inside face. Nice thing about a wheel style gauge is if I want to get to the line, I can simply roll it until it makes it, and then I can stop, instead of an old pin style where once you set the beam down, you can no longer see the pin, so it's just a lot of guesswork. Okay, so I need to cut this off and I need to remove that. I'm gonna ideally, if I could get this perfect from the saw, it'll save a lot of work. I don't want to have to add any back on. If I don't get it perfect from the saw, I can go in and fix it with the router plane. Now I have a tendency to push the waste piece against the blade just to keep the kerf tight and to keep that saw tracking properly. If your waste starts to fall away or allow the saw to wobble, then you end up with less than a perfect cut. Let's stand that up so I can get right down to this side. I don't want to go over. Okay, now I've got to come in and cut this off. And what I'm going to do here is take my chisel and just cut a little trough up against that gauge line. And what that will do is just provide for a little shoulder to put my saw up against. Makes it easier to get that saw start sawing accurately. That double gauge line caused me a bit of grease, so I'll go in here with the chisel and just deepen that. And be careful when you do this that you don't slip by that gauge line. So I take a fairly steep approach. If you were shallow like this, it would be easier to just, too easy to just blast through it. Okay, now we want to cut this off. Keep your saw plumb. Now I'm down to the line out here, not quite on the inside. Okay, now I'll just clean up that material in the corner. Have a look at that. Now I can still see my gauge line. Although it's a pretty accurate cut, if you look at it, you see the same amount of gauge line all the way around. Can't tell on this side. So to make it precise, I'll use my router plane. And we'll clamp this in place so it doesn't move around. And I added an additional base just to have more reference surface. And when I get close, I'm just going to go back in and tighten this set screw up a little bit more so that there's lots of resistance so that it will not move when I start using it. And I'll just keep wiggling it while I'm turning the thumb screw to bring that down. Always better to take multiple small passes with this and try to hog it all off in one. So if I have to, I'll take one or two series of cuts. Okay. A lot of pressure on my left hand to keep that from dipping. The cutter is going to naturally try to pull it this way, so you've got to fight that with your other hand. Now I'm making contact on the side facing me, but I'm not touching on the opposite side, so I know that cut's not perfect. So just go in there and that inside corner with the chisel. Now I can see the little bit of feathered edge left from the marking gauge. So there's the knife, the surface that the marking gauge left, and there's the little bit of a well, what would you call it? That's the V side that would be in the waist. So I want to get rid of that. So I'm going to set it so that my cutter is right on that surface. There it is right there. So I just referenced the cutter on the router plane to sit in the surface that the cutter. So when this was drug through the wood, it left a nice square edge on this side and a V-shaped taper, a V-shaped cut on this side. So what I did is I set my cutter on my router plane on the surface right here. And that little bit of a feathered edge is what was left on this side. So once we're rid of that, then we're down there exactly where we want to be. Again, lots of bearing on the left side to keep that from tipping. Okay. Okay. So there's half the joint. Now what we're going to do with the other half is we're going to cut. I'll just pencil it in real quick so you can follow along. If you can imagine, we're going to cut out this amount so that we'll have that nice big surface area right there of long grain to long grain surface to secure that joint. So to lay that out, we'll scribe a line on the inside edge. We'll reference that with the gauge, and then we're going to remove all of this material. So that's the only other thing that we need to do. So I've got to line that up and didn't get that right out to the edge. Now I'm going to use this plain blade just because it's got a flat side, which is the side I rest against the square. And it's always best to take multiple light passes, deepening the cut each time instead of trying to do it with one heavy pass where the knife will have a tendency to follow the grain. Okay, that gauge is set to represent half the thickness of this. Since we're keeping this side, we're going to reference off of this face, and that'll keep the bevel in the waist. And we're going to cross the end. Nice deep cut. Alright, so we can either make this cut first or we can make this cut first. I'm going to choose to do this one. I just like to have that piece well supported so it holds the blade on the saw and keeps it tracking. Now this is a little bit of a difficult one because you got to follow two lines at the same time. I want that sitting so when I'm finished I'm touching here and I'm touching there. Force your saw, let the weight of the saw do the work. Okay, we're almost at the line. Front and back. Ooh, I'm way off back here. Good thing I got my router going. Okay, now we can go in here, make this cut. Now I'm going to do the same thing on this one as I did the previous one. I'm going to go in and create a little bevel, a little trough with the chisel. Hey, if you like this video, we have more. Our monthly newsletter has subscriber-only content, discounts monthly on tools, and anything we bring out that's new, subscribers get first crack at it. Click on the link below. Let's get back to work. Okay. Now, let's see if we can't. Didn't get all that debris out of there. Bring my lamp over. I can see on this side. Down to the line. I'll finish that freehand. Now we'll clamp this in place. Should be able to use the exact same setting. Now this is going to be a heavier cut than I would want, so I know it's going to be light out here because as I made my cut I sloped this way and made it too thick in here. So what I'll do is just take light pass. Breaking my own rule and trying to take too much off at one time, but I didn't want to have to change the setting that I already had on this cutter. Okay, now we got to check this because I'm pretty sure this is sloping out. So if I lay that on there, see the gap that I have. So I've got to go in there and clean that up. Now I can do it a couple of ways. I can do it with a shoulder plane. I can do it with a chisel. I'll check it first to make sure that I've got a good saw cut, a good line. I may need some work too. I think what I'll do is I'll just come in here, just inside the edge. Now we'll try that. Actually going to relieve just a little bit of this inside edge. It doesn't provide any valuable glue surface. Not all the way out to the end because it will show. Okay, we can make it tighter than that. So let's try using the shoulder plane. I'll use a small one. That way we know for a fact that we're going to end up getting a square cut. Now I want to reference this blade so that it's flush with this side, because that's the side that's going to lay up against what we would call a cheek. Eyeball it first to make sure that its blade is parallel to the sole. And the blade is always a little bit wider than the plane, so when you press it down like that, it makes one side flush. That you're pushing up against the plane, you can actually feel the blade protruding a little bit right there. So I'll go in there. I'm going to give myself a little more blade. And you can see there's the sawn surface that's problematic, and maybe even a little bit there. So we'll just keep working with this until we got a nice clean surface that's all coming from the plane. And when you're using this, all you can really do to see is to look down through this hole right here, right down into where the blade is. And you can see what kind of contact you're making with the wood. And I'm looking for a full width shaving the whole way, but you can see I don't have it yet. I've just got from here to here. It's getting closer. We still don't have it out here, and it looks like we may need some contact back here. It looks like, still have a tip right there. Not yet. I'll give it one more. Okay, let's try that. Okay, so when that goes together, it's nice and tight. We had to go a little bit farther. I must have went over with my saw, because as a result we've got a little bit of the end of the board sticking out, but that's all right. We can bring that down with the plane. So what we would do with that, and I'll do it up real quick before we close. We'll glue this long grain surface. We may as well put, although it doesn't give us a lot of effective glue surface, we'll at least coat this end grain of the miter. Didn't mean to get so much glue out there. Now, we'll put that piece right there so that we're getting pressure over the entire glue surface. And then, where's the other one we cut off? There it is. We'll put this one back here. You can actually get away with one clamp because those blocks acting like cauls will spread the pressure of the clamp for us. Now, before we get it too tight, we can use a long clamp to pull that miter tight. Put a little more pressure on that. Now, when that dries, you've got a fair bit of long grain to long grain glue surface, and that should keep that nice and tight. That's probably the easiest way, with hand tools anyway, to get a decently strong miter. Now, if you like my work and enjoy my style of teaching, click on any one of these videos and help take your woodworking to the next level. I've always said, better tools make the job so much easier. If you click on the link below, the chisel and plane icon, it'll take you to our site and introduce you to all the tools that we actually manufacture right here in our shop. It'll also give you information on our online and in-person workshops.